The Chicago Bears are going to get an up-close and personal look at some of the top offensive and defensive linemen in the NFL draft this week, on hand for the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Just download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. On the show today, we turn our attention to the NFL draft and some of the top prospects the Bears will be keeping an eye on, or should be keeping an eye on at least, down at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. As you're hearing this podcast, I'm on my way down to Mobile, Alabama. So the next couple of pods will not be from, the same home studio with the same home mic. So I apologize. It won't sound quite as crystal clean and clear, but we'll be scouting these players in person and talking about all the biggest movers in the NFL draft. But today I want to set the stage for that a little bit by looking at some of the top names the Bears and we will be watching this week. We'll look at some defensive linemen. There's a few guys from the same schools. There's a couple of guys from Texas A&M, a couple of guys from Mississippi, a couple of guys from South Carolina that are like some different duos here of different flavors of edge rushers and defensive tackles the Bears could be looking at in the first couple of rounds. We'll look at some of the top offensive linemen. A lot of tweeners in this class, guys who played tackle in college but might play guard in the NFL, but maybe could play tackle still in the NFL. Kind of got to see how this class is going to play out. And then we'll go through some of the other names at other spots, a couple of safeties, a couple of running backs, a tight end, some other names that the Bears should be keeping an eye on that are really fun players down in Mobile this year. But I want to start with the pass rushers because to me that feels like the most likely spot where one of these players could be the Bears' first-round pick, or that the Bears are going to need to use early draft picks on this defensive line. They need an edge rusher to pair with Montez Sweat. They need more depth on the interior. The Bears have plenty of needs on both sides of the trenches, and I'm not here to argue that versus O-line. It's just, we'll start somewhere, and we'll start with the pass rushers. And this pass rush group in the draft, and specifically the players in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, is interesting because you've got a bunch of college teammates all there together. There's 3 different linemen from Texas A&M. There's 3 different linemen from Mississippi, a few from South Carolina, and I wanted to go through some of these top defensive lineman names that you need to know, not just for the Senior Bowl, but because they're going to be prospects the Bears look out throughout the process leading up to the NFL draft. So let's start with Texas A&M. They've got an edge rusher, Nick Scarton. I'm not even sure if I'm going to pronounce all these names correct. And then a defensive tackle, Shamar Stewart, who are both down there. They got another lineman who's down there as well. But these two, to me, are a little bit of a class above their teammate and some of the other prospects down in Mobile. I mean, these are going to be potential first-round guys we're talking about here that could play their way up into the top 10 of the draft, especially, I think, Scarton. He's 6'4", 280 as an edge rusher. He is big, he is strong, and he moves really well for 6'4", 280. He didn't have elite production in terms of, sacks the way you might think an athlete like that is, but he is, screams untapped potential. He plays a little bit too high, but because he's so big and strong and fast, he didn't always need to have perfect technique. But, sometimes it limited him. And I think there's a lot you can do with a prospect like this where he's got everything you can't teach, and you just got to keep the pads down. He's got a spin move. He's got some pass rush moves. He's not, totally raw. He just needs to take his skills and utilize them even more effectively. And I think he could be a guy that a lot of defensive line coaches fall in love with because he's got the size. He's big and strong and fast. He's not one of these, outside linebackers in disguise. No, this guy, you can kick him inside in passing downs, and I think he's going to be a really fun player to see. Does he physically separate himself from some of his edge rusher teammates down here? Because his college teammate, Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M, is a defensive tackle who's 6'6", 285. He's not that much bigger or heavier, but he plays inside and Scourton plays on the edge. Another guy with great length at 6'6". He's strong. He moves pretty well for a big guy at 285. Like he's fluid as an athlete for that size. But another one of these, like, you got to clean up the pad level, the hand placement, technique-wise. They're just both, well, he's a more of a raw type of pass rusher, but someone who, man, you feel like you get either of these two guys with a good NFL defensive line coach who can mold them and build them up to be really great players. Scourton on the edge, Stewart on the inside. They can both rotate a little bit. Those guys are really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do. Then you go over to Mississippi, 3 different Mississippi defensive linemen. Walter Nolan, and then the edge rushers, Jared Ivey and Princely Umanamielen. I'm never going to say his name correctly here. And they're a fun mix too. Like, Princely is kind of your classic leaner outside linebacker speed edge rusher, right? Like, he's 6'4", 255, so he's not like Leonard Floyd thin, but he's a little bit on the thinner side, but he's got that, that quick get off of the line of scrimmage and can get upfield and really stretch the pocket vertically there. You just wonder, in the running game, can he be a little bit stronger? Can he anchor a little bit more there? Can he load up if he's going to play a 4-3 in Dennis Allen's Chicago Bears defense? What that ultimately looks like for him in the NFL. I think he can do it. It's just one of the question marks for him. Whereas the other Mississippi edge rusher, Jared Ivey, he's 6'6", 285. Like, he is the long, strong, physical edge rusher, kind of the opposite style there, he's more of a limited athlete. Like, the upside has more of a question there. Can he ever become a 10-sack guy, or is he going to be a rotational guy? Like, Ivey's not a first-round prospect, at least from what I've seen of him so far, but like a guy who later on, if you want to draft and develop and just feel like you got a high-floor guy who can come in and contribute right away and give you some pass rush, be good in running game, size and strength that you can't teach, absolutely sign me up for some Jared Ivey in that case. And then on the interior, Walter Nolan, we mentioned, 6'4", 290, again, like strong, physical guy who moves pretty well for that size, but the pass rush moves are still developing, and the hand placement is still a work in progress. Like, he's a little bit more, Jervon Dexter-like in that way, where he's big, and he moves well, and he's strong, and man, if you can just teach him how to play defensive line better, you could really unlock something there with Nolan. Again, probably not a first-round guy in the same way there, but we'll see. We'll see. If he can show further aptitude here, right? If he progresses and shows better technique, that's how you move your way up at something like the Senior Bowl down here. And then 2 others quick from South Carolina. TJ Sanders on the interior, Kyle Kennard on the edge. Sanders, another one of these like big, long defensive tackles who gets off the line of scrimmage very quickly. Like, he can get a shot out of a cannon, but he's kind of stiff and very straightforward. He's not a fluid side-to-side kind of athlete, but if he just needs to pin his ears back and get upfield, he's going to get upfield. He just doesn't have a lot of the wiggle, right? That makes some of these interior guys truly, truly special athletes. He's just quick, but not flexible in some of that same way. And he's got the big, strong hands, and he plays a little bit high from a pad level standpoint. So there's a lot to like there, but there's some limitations there as well. And then Kyle Kennard at the edge, a little bit leaner, kind of like Princely from Mississippi, 6'5", 254, great burst off the line of scrimmage, good speed. He's a little bit of an older prospect. Again, not super big, not super strong, but man, give me fast, explosive, twitchy edge rushers and we'll make it work, right? You can take them off the field in obvious rushing situations, or you can rotate them in on third downs, right? You're going to find a role for those guys in the NFL. They can have long careers, even if they're not going to be necessarily always every down perfect run defenders at all times. Give me a great pass rusher with pass rushing upside. Kennard is that. Princely Umanamielen from Mississippi is the same way. They're similar types of prospects in that regard. So there's a lot to like out of these. I'm just highlighting, what is that, 7 defensive linemen at the Senior Bowl that I'm looking at watching, but there's going to be there's a bunch more there, plus all the other positions, and we'll be watching them go one-on-one with offensive linemen. You get to kind of watch 2 birds, 1 stone in the trenches here. So I want to go through some of the tackles and guards and centers that the Bears will keep an eye on. The Bears famously draft a lot of Senior Bowl players consistently every single season, so we'll see if they're able to grab a couple of guys out of these groups next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, Eagles and Chiefs. Endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, I'm sure Mahomes will be the favorite there, or even betting on the coin toss FanDuel makes it easy to get on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. The best part is, if you win your first $5 bet, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets on top of your winnings. So download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. The Bears need to draft offensive linemen this year. Plural. Offensive line men, not man, men. Multiple offensive linemen. Now, whether that's a first and a second round pick or, a third and a fifth round pick, I want to see multiple linemen picked for the Bears this year. And there's a good chance the Bears take one of these Senior Bowl offensive linemen. Karana Magaji, I believe, was a Senior Bowl offensive lineman last year. Every single year, the Bears draft Senior Bowl players. And with so many needs along this Bears offensive line, sign me up for any of these guys. Again, I don't know that this year's offensive line class at the Senior Bowl specifically, are any of these guys going to be there for the Bears at the beginning of the first round? That feels a little bit early for a lot of the guys we're about to talk about, but certainly those early second round picks, or if the Bears were to trade down in the first round, or as we get lower on the list and later in the draft, there's going to be some really nice options here for the Bears to draft and potentially just develop, even if you don't have to ask these guys to be starters right away in year one. And a lot of these offensive linemen there's a theme with this year's class. You'll see not just in the Senior Bowl, but across the rest of the NFL draft. There's a lot of guys who played tackle in college who we're not sure if they're going to play guard or tackle in the NFL. And it'll matter a lot, how long their arms measure in at something like the Senior Bowl and at the Combine, how well they perform athletically and physically. And the Senior Bowl is a great opportunity for them to practice at multiple positions. So a guy who played tackle in college you can practice him at guard for a week and see, okay, how does he hold up if you throw him in at guard? And maybe he's better there, or maybe he's clearly better at tackle. But we'll start with, say, Josh Connerly from Oregon, left tackle for them. One of these super athletic tackles who moves really, really well in space. He can flow sideline to sideline in the zone rushing scheme. He can get upfield at the second level in running plays. And certainly in pass protection, you're not going to see too many edge rushers blow by him because he's so quick. For him, though, that kind of comes with a double-edged sword there of he's not lean, or he's not light, but there are strength questions there. Not that he's weak or can't anchor, but when you talk about going from college to the NFL level strength from defensive ends across him or defensive tackles that loop outside, you just have some questions about he's never going to be the biggest, strongest guy. You think Braxton Jones a little bit here, where it's Braxton Jones is not weak, but not the strongest tackle, but he moves really well in space. Not that he and Braxton Jones are exactly the same. I'm just talking profile-ish of a name to give you something to picture body-wise. On the other hand, you've got Ariante Ursley from Minnesota, who's big, long, strong, physical tools. This guy is 6'6", 330, I think. He is humongous, but moves really well for a humongous offensive tackle. On the other hand, he needs a lot of cleaning up, from a footwork standpoint, from a hand placement standpoint, from a pad level standpoint. It's a bit raw still, but he's big, long, strong physical tools that you just can't teach, and you feel like the ceiling with somebody like Ariante is super high and untapped. That man, the best version of him is not going to be his rookie year, and he's still going to be. He could start as a rookie, but he's still got to come along a little bit more. But he could really become a truly special tackle with some NFL caliber offensive line coaching there. Those two guys are a little bit more firmly offensive tackles, given the size and the length that they possess at the position. But then you get guys like Armand Memboul from Missouri, or Jonah Savianil from Arizona, or Marcus Mbow from Purdue. Guys who were really solid right tackles in college. I think Mbow played some guard as well in college, but you just don't know if they're going to be able to hold up on the outside in the NFL. For Memboul from Missouri, he is your classic mauler. He's a physical ass kicker fighter of a right tackle, but probably going to end up moving inside to guard, and he'll be just fine at guard because he likes to be in a phone booth and move human beings. He is a fun player to watch on the offensive line. Comparatively, I think a guy like Jonah I can never get these last names. Savianil. There's so many vowels in his last name. I'm sure it's one one of the Pacific Islands. He is thick, he is strong, but limited as an athlete, right? He doesn't get out in space super well. And, when guys get faster going up against him in the NFL compared to what he had in college, like he can survive outside in college. He, to me, feels a lot more like a guard in the NFL. But because he's so thick and strong, like, he can handle defensive tackles at the next level. And then you don't have to ask him to move so much in space as a result when you're able to kick him to the inside there. Marcus Mbow from Purdue, his is more of like, he's athletic, but he's lean at tackle. You wonder how well he's going to be able to anchor edge rushers on the outside, when they're able to kind of get that speed to power transition there. Like, it's a little bit easier at guard because you can really sink down a lot lower and absorb contact, whereas at tackle, you're trying to move and then absorb on the move, and you kind of just need more of a built-in, thicker lower half and trunk to just be able to take that on. He's played both positions. I think it kind of depends. Again, like if he comes to Mobile, looks strong and bulks up a little bit and can anchor pretty well, then maybe he can play tackle in the NFL. Or maybe you just feel like he could play either, and there's some versatility there that you might like. Again, this is not a first-round prospect we're talking here at all, but he is somebody I think that has, again, physical tools from an athleticism standpoint that not a lot of offensive linemen can move as well as he does. One more we'll throw in here. Wyatt Milam from West Virginia, or Milam. He's been like a 3 or 4 year starter, really experienced, like solid, really good technique. But you just kind of wonder, like, physically, he's nothing special. And he feels like a guy who could plug and play, and he could be a starter day one. But, does he ever become a Pro Bowl caliber lineman? I don't know. Again, tackle for sure. I think you probably could play him in guard if you wanted to. But, like, he holds up fine on the edge. Like, I think he's a guy who, if you want the high floor, plug him in right away and get him rolling. He is your guy. But he's not so much the develop and hope he becomes something great. He's just a really solid. He's going to have a long career. Maybe as a backup, but still a long career because he's just a guy who gets the job done and knows what he's doing. He's smart already. He knows how to take care of business, and but his lack of ceiling and his age may be something that holds his draft status down just a little bit more. But you get a nice mix here of like tackles who can kick inside and play guard, tackles who are athletic and move really well, tackles who are big and strong and physical but maybe aren't as athletic. There's a whole nice variety here for the Bears to then be able to address offensive line in multiple ways. So you can go there and grab a really solid starting guard in the second round or whatever. And then you could grab a developmental center later on. Or, you could grab another tackle to compete to start right away in the second round and then grab a developmental guard later on. Like, there's a lot of different ways the Bears can attack the offensive line in this draft. And they're going to get a nice crop of them to evaluate here at the Senior Bowl. It's going to be a trench-heavy draft. It needs to be a trench-heavy draft. It's going to be a trench-heavy week for me watching them down in Mobile. But there's some other guys that I want to talk about that are fun, exciting players who fit Bears' needs, even if they're not as immediately pressing as O-line and D-line is like the big one. But there's a couple of tight ends, a couple of safeties, a couple of running backs, just spots where, man, these players are going to be really fun to watch. And, they would also fit something that the Bears do need to address in the draft. So we'll look at some of the other favorite players, some potential weapons for Ben Johnson, some potential long-term pieces on the back end of the defense next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free and share it with your network and get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn has features that help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. I'm a member of LinkedIn. I'm guessing you're on LinkedIn, and if you're not, a lot of your friends, family members, and coworkers are on LinkedIn, so it's a great way to find all of the best people for your job. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high-quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we've been stuck in the trenches here, and I love trench play, but let's get to some of the other players in the other areas of the field. There's some really fun prospects I want to get to here. How about a tight end? Yeah, the Bears don't need to use a first-round pick on a tight end. They've got Cole Kmet. They're probably going to sign a good backup to replace Gerald Everett. But I'm always a fan of drafting athletic, high upside tight ends, and you can never have too many good weapons, and keep somebody developing in the chamber here, and give Ben Johnson another option to work with Caleb Williams. And down at the Senior Bowl, we get to see Harold Fannin Jr., the tight end from Bowling Green. If you haven't watched any Bowling Green football this year, that's okay, but you may have heard of Harold Fannin because he broke pretty much every single FBS college record for tight ends. He had over 1,500 receiving yards this year as a tight end at Bowling Green. Like, he is athletic, stretches the field, playmaker. He plays like some H-backs and tight end, big slot receiver. The main downside here, he's 6'3", 231. So, like, Harold Fannin is not, I mean, you could mistake him for an oversized wide receiver, right? He's not your traditional inline, big-bodied tight end. He's a great playmaker, and you line up at tight end and try and get matched up with linebackers and safeties instead of corners at receiver, but he's not otherworldly in terms of size or even length there. 6'3", 231 is not all that impressive, compared to like Cole Kmet at 6'5", 260 or whatever he's listed at nowadays. Like, Fannin is so fun to watch, though. Like, you get him the ball, he's going to work the seam. He can be a vertical deep threat for you from that tight end spot. Like, the Bears haven't had this kind of a weapon, a receiving weapon at tight end like Harold Fannin. But, playing in a smaller program in Bowling Green, it's not like it's FCS, but still, I want to see how he adjusts to the level of competition. He's going to have a lot better players covering him in Mobile than he had at Bowling Green. One of those players who, actually, I don't know if they're on the same team or not, but one of those players who will be down there covering tight ends is Notre Dame safety Xavier Watts. He's another guy I'm really excited to see here. I mean, you saw him in the national championship game and throughout their playoff run. He is a tough, aggressive, physical safety. He likes to hit in the running game, gets his nose dirty, but like, he is also good on the back end. Like, he has all-around skills. This is going to be a first-round pick kind of safety. The Bears, where they pick right now, feels a little bit too early there. He'd be more like a trade-down option, or if you traded up from the second round, I suppose, but like, he can do a little bit of everything there. He's not an elite athlete in that regard as far as, range on the back end. I don't think he has amazing coverage instinct. Like, he's more of a strong safety for sure. But I still think somebody like Watts could be a potential, if the Bears don't want to make Brisker their long-term option because of the injuries and everything, he could be someone who develops in the wings behind Jaquan Brisker, or certainly you could have him sit behind Kevin Byard for one more year and grow into that role, or he could plug and play right away if you want to cut Byard and go right to Watts. That definitely would be an option for you there. He's a fun player to watch, and he's just a guy that's easy to root for and get excited about. A couple other safeties I'll throw in real quick while we're on the position here. Andrew Makuba from Texas, and then Lathan Ransom from Ohio State. Two very different styles of safety here. Makuba from Texas is much more of the deep safety. He's got ball skills. He's a playmaker. Speed, covers the field well, but he's lean. He's barely 200 pounds. We'll see what he weighs in. Lean and thin, and just not a big hitter there, but somebody who can patrol the back end. And if he's playing the deep half of the field, he doesn't need to be huge and humongous. And he's a guy who, if the Bears want more of a traditional style of free safety, they don't really have that right now with Byard and Brisker. He could be a great option there. Again, not a first round guy at all, but someone, day 2, day 3 that you feel like could, if not start right away, develop into a starter on the back end. Whereas Lathan Ransom from Ohio State, much more of the strong safety type, thick, strong, physical. I think he's got some limitations from a speed standpoint, and trying to roam on the back end, you don't want to ask him to play the Eddie Jackson role too much there, but a guy who's going to be an enforcer over the middle of the field, that I want to see if he can set a physical tone in Mobile, and kind of see how he and Xavier Watts, how much we're going to see the two of them having been in the national championship game, and whether or not they can be effective players down there and kind of set themselves apart. Two running backs real quick before we wrap up, and I'm dying a little bit here. My throat is scratching away. I'm going to pause for a quick moment. Excuse me. Two running backs I want to see where the Bears don't need to draft a running back, and certainly don't need to draft one early when you've got DeAndre Swift and Roshan Johnson, etc. But Cam Skatibo from Arizona State is going to be down there. He is just a football player. He is hard to bring down. He's not like an elite athlete. He's not the fastest guy. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the strongest guy, but he just does not go down. Right? It's the contact balance. It's the motor, determination, grit. He's a fun player to watch. He's just a football player through and through. Like, he embodies what you want a running back to be. Maybe that means the ceiling isn't as high because he's not the home run threat per se, but he's just a dependable, tough runner. When you need 3 yards, he's going to get you your 3 yards. He will not go down easily. First guy is not bringing Skatibo down much at all. And then Devin Neal from Kansas is much more of the explosive instincts back who's just fluid and shifty and can, cut on a dime and get upfield. Maybe he's not, like his 40-yard dash time isn't going to set records. He's not the most long speed, but he is explosive, quick, patient runner as well. Like he knows when to go, and then when he goes, he goes. I mean, it is fun to watch, and I want to see if that explosiveness stands out among other running backs down there and among the defensive players trying to bring him down. Skatibo has more of a receiving game upside, and he's pretty good in pass pro too. Like, he's just a football player, whereas like Neal really didn't have to do much of that at Kansas. Wasn't asked to catch the ball a lot. Was not very good in pass protection. So I'm sure the coaches down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl are gonna use him in the passing game and see what he can do. You think a player who's got that kind of explosiveness and instincts would be good as a receiver with the ball in his hands, but I want to see more of that from him. Can he be more of a every down, 3-down back? So that's where he and Skatibo are kind of different, where like Skatibo is going to be a good Sketibo. Sketibo, I think that's how you say it, from Arizona State. Like, he can hold up in pass pro. He's a good receiver. He's got good hands. He's a tough physical runner. You're not going to be like wowed with the big time plays, but it's the dependability, high floor type of player, whereas Neal has the ability to break big ones and take the top off, but can you rely on him in the passing game as a blocker? Still to be determined. So those are some of the non-trench players I'm really excited about in Mobile. We're going to have a whole offseason to go in depth on the NFL draft and all the players the Bears should be picking with their top picks in this draft, where you got the extra one from the Carolina Panthers. Ryan Poles is going to have a lot of ammunition to go. First, the 10th overall pick, then 39, 41, and 72. 4 picks in the top 75 in the first 3 rounds. Good chance one of those picks comes from this Senior Bowl roster, and that's what we're going to break down for you this week on the podcast. But we're not going to do all NFL draft talk because we got to talk about defensive coordinator Dennis Allen and offensive coordinator Declan Doyle as well coming to town now, and that seems to be a bit more official at this point. So lots more coming your way this week. Make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're looking for a second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast for more football coverage league-wide. Comes out twice a day with Tyler Rowland in the morning and Tony Wiggins in the afternoon. So go check that out wherever you listen to podcasts. Coming back tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Bears from Mobile, Alabama, and another opportunity for you to bear down.